Alrighty, this is day one of the project. We just got our building permits yesterday. So here's kind of the old farmhouse. My grandfather built it in about 1946. So you can see right here that this part of the house here was original 46. I already replaced a window when we moved into it about 4 or 5 years back. But this area here, that was an addition in the 70s. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, that's my helper Jacob, I'm going to take this kind of lean-to right here. We're going to mirror that on the other side. We're going to take off this little sun porch. We're going to come out with the deck. And then we're going to take off the back another 16 feet as well. So right now the house sits at about 2100 square feet. We're going to add about 1400 square feet to it. But part of that square footage includes the attic, upstairs attic area here, which there are stairs going up there are well steeper than code. So we're going to try to kind of eliminate that. So, but for today on day one, first thing we need to do is, of course, when we're doing an addition, is foundation work. But this old part of the house here does not have a foundation. So part of the seismic codes and whatnot, what we're going to do is we're going to put a foundation underneath this existing house. So the first step in this is I'm going to remove the skirting that goes around, at least on a couple of sides here. I'm going to probably try to pour this in a couple of pours. That way it's not too crazy when it comes to supporting the house, because I'm not going to pay a bunch of money to have the thing lifted. But you can see that this addition is sitting on these big pier blocks that my grandfather salvaged from the mill, and then it's the rafters and on beams here. In addition to that, the old part of the house, you can see that's built with logs, and what you're seeing there in that one log that goes across, that's actually kind of a cross log that kind of dovetails into actually bigger logs. And the far side of the house is built with 4x12s on the flat as a subfloor. But this side over here, you can see it's kind of made with these rough cut 2x8s, and then it's got a tongue and groove flooring up there. So what I'll end up doing is on that far side over there next to the skirting is I'll put in another beam temporarily a couple of feet back from that, and then I'll pull that beam and those posts out. I'll pour the concrete right underneath the wall. I'll put in a pressure treated sill plate, and then I'll put in another 4x6 block. Then the other thing is, if you notice, there's actually no ledger board on the end there. So I'll add a ledger board on the end. And then in addition, when I replace these windows, I actually put them in here about 1.5 inches further out. So my original plan, which I'm still planning on going to here, is I'm going to actually do runners down and actually fill in 1.5 inches of rigid foam insulation and tape it. And part of the reason for that is my grandfather, he grew up in tornado country, and in tornado country, a lot of wind, everything else back in Nebraska. So every single bit of wall space he could, he braced this thing with 45-degree lumber, like in every single bay, just going all the way back up and down this whole thing. So if I'm going to insulate this thing, which right now it's just kind of insulated with some newspaper at best, but if I'm going to insulate this thing, there's going to be a lot of voids that are just going to get missed. So I'm still debating. I might try to still blow some insulation in the walls, but then I'm not going to get a very good shell out of it, so I'm going to put that some rigid foam on top of it. So there we are with the plan. And so step one today is I'm going to get this skirting removed and see how far we get and see if I got enough lumber around here for a temporary beam or not, and go from there. So there we go. And I'll next up is I'm going to go set up the time-lapse camera, and we'll see if we can't get some good time-lapse of this thing. Alrighty, so we got all the skirting off on a side and a piece here. So if we kind of look how this thing is built, we have floor joists here. They didn't put any sort of stringer or runner or anything else on the inner. Grandpa didn't. And that's all sitting on this. That's actually a 2x4 nailed onto a 2x6 to bring it out. All that's sitting on these cedar posts. All this white stuff that you see here, that's all lime. So Grandpa put that lime on there everywhere to prevent bugs from eating this thing alive. So that was a big problem with people who build with logs and don't use pressure treated, is even if you see he got it up off the ground on these pretty decent sized blocks, and those are probably fir on the far side. I think he used cedar or some fir depending on that, but water's one thing, bugs are another. Hey Jacob, back up, there's a bee right there, so we'll get that bee. So anyhow, so what we're gonna do is we'll come back about 3 feet or so, and we'll put in a temporary beam across here. We'll nail that all up, put on some temporary posts with some screw jacks, and then we're gonna brace them a little bit so nothing rolls or flips. I don't think this house is gonna go anywhere, but you got to remember that the walls here, which supports the roof, so there's a lot of weight on the end of the building. So if we just go ahead and put a beam in on 3 feet, what it's going to do is it's going to push down on these beams and up on the other side. Now a 3 foot to 15 foot or 14 foot or whatever it is cantilever is probably not gonna cause anything to whip or twist or warp or anything else like that, but we'll put some braces in there too to even just give it a little extra, even though it probably wouldn't even be needed. Then the other thing to consider is that because there's no stringer on the end here, it's also conceivable that all these joists can roll, because there's actually nothing in here that is actually preventing a roll in there. So what I might even end up doing is putting some blocks in there just in case to prevent that roll. I might not. I mean, there's a ton of flooring and everything else nailed on there, so well, I'll see what I'll do when I build it. I don't think we're gonna roll, but you always hate to miscalculate. So anyway, so next step here is I'll probably pull off some of these lower boards just to help with access, and then I'm going to go to the lumber pile and see what I have here for lumber. But it might end up being the next step might be a trip to the lumber yard. And my son thinks that tractor is a jungle gym, so good for him. All right, so we're at the end of day one. Thanks for that. So we have this whole side here all re-supported. Lean on me. Whole side here re-supported. So not a bad day here. So tomorrow we're going to get this whole side here dug out for footings. Pull these big pyramid blocks out. Those came from the old mill. And then we'll dig it down, get her formed, get some steel in it, and we'll pour the footing. And then after that, we'll get the wall formed. Then we'll pour the wall. And then we'll get the house re-leveled. We're just on the far side, one of the doors sticking just a little bit, which means it's not, but that corner is either a little higher or a little lower than it was. But I'm not too worried about it. Now, if this were a newer house, stuff like that would pop a lot of seams and drywalls and everything else. But there's no drywall upstairs in this thing. It's all plywood, shiplap covered with plywood. So from the stories of my grandpa, he used to apparently have the same sort of issues with the house settling and doors wouldn't close right, and he'd crawl under here and jack and shim and re-level the house, and he'd apparently have to do that every few years. So here we are today, and tomorrow we'll start the digging. Just get cleaned up for tonight because I'm kind of tired now.